All right, welcome to our program tonight. As we've indicated, the Bank of Ghana has just concluded a press conference on recapitalization of banks. We are getting a clearer idea as to how things are going to be looking like in the course of this year. We are working to bring you a playback of that press conference that got underway a few moments ago. While we try to do that, we will be trying to understand the issues as we know them right now. Joining me in studio is Joy Business Assistant Editor Northern Aqua Hayford. We expected the Bank of Ghana to hold this press conference or give an announcement sort of after the deadline for the meeting of the capital requirement elapsed on the 31st of December last year, and they have. And I don't know where to start from because there are so many things to talk about. So let's first talk about GN Bank being downgraded to a savings and loans company. What do we know so far?
Okay, so what it means is that GN Bank now is not a commercial or investor bank anymore. They cannot undertake certain transactions, so they're being moved into a lower grade, a savings and loans company. That's what they're supposed to be doing. And remember that somewhere last year, Dr. Papas Kwesindum, I think somewhere in October, when they seem to have certain challenges, they indicated that, look, they're trying to recapitalize the bank. If they are not able to, he, as a person, would not mind if they were moved into the savings and loan area.
And the governor indicated that GN applied for the savings and loans status.
Yes.
So, I mean, admittedly, they realized that they couldn't meet the 400 million city capital requirement.
Exactly, and that's the reason why they have gotten themselves downgraded. And this is an opportunity for them as a bank to regroup. And don't forget, we have 23 banks today as part of this process. That is what the governor did tell us. He did indicate that, look, the field is still opened. People, and it's not a ceiling to say that we have put a ceiling, no banks again is going to be accepted. No, he says it's still open. We don't know what will happen tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow morning we can get up and then new licenses have been issued and banks. And so it gives an opportunity for GN to, okay, let me say GN Savings and Loans. I cannot say GN Bank again after this announcement. GN Savings and Loans, or formerly GN Bank, to regroup and see if they can raise that 400 million to become a bank.
No, but let me not cut you. Let's go to the phone lines and speak with my colleague, George Yafe, who is at the Bank of Ghana headquarters. He has been following the press conference. So, George, bring us up to speed on all that has been happening in the last couple of hours.
So, a while ago, the governor gave an update to the fact that 23 universal banks, as we speak right now, they have met the new minimum capital requirement as we speak. That is at the end of the process. As we speak now, and this might be a little bit confusing, but 16 banks have met the paid-up capital requirement of 400 million Ghana cedis. Now, the Bank of Ghana has approved 3 applications for measures. You can talk about the First Atlantic Energy Bank one. You can talk about the Omni Sahel Bank, then the First National Bank, and then GHL. They have also merged, so making it 3 as well. Let me try and break it down a little bit. Some of the private pension funds in Ghana have injected fresh equity into 5 banks. These are indigenous banks. And you remember earlier on there, when there was this back and forth, we reported that it is 5 banks who may sign up to this. Now, this includes 2 state-owned banks, that is ADB and NIB, benefiting from this scheme, as well as the merged Omni Bank, as well as Universal Merchant Bank and Prudential Bank. So these are only 5 banks that, as we speak now, they have signed up to take the pension funds from actually from GAT to actually help them top up their capital and then meet the new minimum capital requirement.
George, let me not cut you, just so we can get a clear picture. So we have ADB, NIB, Omni and Sahel Sahara, UMB, Prudential Bank, benefiting from the support from the Ghana Amalgamated Trust. Is that it?
You're right, sir.
Okay, so that makes 6 of them, as we have been reporting.
Yeah, but don't forget that some of them are merging. So you don't let any math confuse you, Darryl. So at the end of the entire process, we will have 23 commercial banks, if you understand. Right. But as we speak right now, it's just 16 banks that, if they look into their books, they have met the minimum capital requirement.
All right, and we had the governor speak about an advisor for the NIB. Can you throw more light on why?
So normally, if the Bank of Ghana is putting in an advisor, it means that it's an external party that is going to help run the bank because you have issues with the current management. So they are going in there to more supervise the running of the bank. And at the point after a certain period, the advisor will then report back to the Bank of Ghana, given whether they should go ahead with that or that one. So more of an interim code running of the bank by an external party appointed by the Bank of Ghana.
All right, and we also have news that Premium Bank and Heritage Bank have had their licenses revoked, and that under a purchase and assumption agreement, CBG takes over.
And if you remember, Darrell, earlier this afternoon, we reported that two banks were going down. These were the two banks that were going down, were going to lose their license. That was Premium and as well Heritage Bank. And you're right on that one. So to speak right now, they've revoked their investor banking license status.
Okay, and just before you go, what other issues are coming out from that press conference?
Well, there was issues about whether Consolidated Bank is, quote, liquid to take on another bank or these two banks. The governor gave the assurance that they are liquid. The bonds that the government issued, they've used for so in terms of their capital position right now, everything is okay. So we said that the two banks were going down. These were the two banks that were going down, the Premium and Heritage, and of course, JN Bank. These were the three institutions that we earlier reported today that they were going down.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, Georgia, for bringing us up to speed there. Joining us on the phone line is also Dr. Richmond Ituahene. Good evening to you, sir. Thanks for joining us tonight. I believe you have been...
Good evening, Darrell.
You have been following events tonight. I just want to hear what you think about all that is taking place.
It looks quite messy.
Messy.
Yeah, because some are being downgraded, some are being done under P&A, others are also being given some assistance. It looks like it's a very, very interesting situation that we have ourselves in.
Okay, any surprises for you?
Well, GN, to me, is not a very surprise. They have had this liquidity for a long time, and they've been trying as much as they did, and they could not fulfill their capital. Furthermore, the Premium and the Heritage, you know, the question that he said about one of them was quite interesting, that they should have gone earlier in March, but because they were under the merger and acquisition, they were decided to let them hold on. And also bringing them to, what I never heard was that what would be under the P&A, what would be the cost? Because normally they would have told us in the GT and Capital Bank, it was about 2.2 billion. And this one, no figures were mentioned. So I was wondering how the bailout is going to be effected to support the Consolidated Bank. But for the other one, the other five, under the pension and private pension equity fund, well, that is in order. But my only concern is that the corporate governance issues need to be addressed properly, because otherwise we will find ourselves in the same bucket. But when the governor said that he appointed an advisor for NIB, long overdue. The advisor should have come long time, because I think they also have messed a lot of things over there. So it's good they appoint an advisor to see how they will run it efficiently and effectively to protect the people's deposit.
Okay, so just for the benefit of our listeners who are, our audience rather, who are wondering what this advisor comes in to do, normally during such situations, what happens?
They are normally appointed under the Act, I think Section 123, where he comes in to ensure that efficient management of cost is managed very well, asset is well protected, so that we don't have the cases where they are going to overspend or create more bad assets.
All right, and also we're hearing news that there have been some measures. So just so that I run our audience through, what we know so far. First Atlantic and Energy Commercial Bank have merged. Omni and Sahel Sahara have merged. First National Bank and GHL Bank have merged. We know that Bank of Baroda voluntarily have left the country, and Stanbic Bank takes over under an assumption agreement. It's not actually a takeover, but a takeover of customers and loans. I just want to pick your thoughts on how you think that the Bank of Ghana managed. Do you think that they've managed the situation well?
Well, when it comes to these mergers and takeovers done in the last minute, it creates a lot of problems, challenges. The post-acquisition, the post-merger challenges will be quite enormous because proper due diligence, financial due diligence has not been done. But as if they're being forced into it, we're going to experience the post-merger challenges, series of challenges, integration, technology integration, personnel, because all these things should have been done comprehensively before any mergers. Because two people are coming together, there will be a lot of challenges on the personnel. So I think that once Nigerians have experienced the same thing, when in the 2006 they were forced to do quick mergers, they realized that in the end, most of them didn't help them. Because mergers is about synergy. 1 + 1 should be 3. It's not 2. 1 + 1 is not 2. In synergy, when it's no 1 + 1 above 3, then you don't succeed. And you cannot get the synergy right because proper due diligence, financial diligence, human due diligence has not been technology. Everyone is holding a different side of technology. If you bring them together, you have a lot of challenges. So it is my prayer that these post-challenges will be dealt efficiently. Other than that, they will be experiencing quite a lot of challenges in the post-merger period.
In the words of Central Bank Governor, recapitalization was to ensure consolidation. Are we going to see a more consolidated banking sector?
Well, there is a need for it. There is a need for more consolidation. Even the 400 we are talking about, in real terms, if you look at the currency, the cedi position today is just about $82 million. As against September 2017, when Governor announced it, it was $91 million. So I think there is a need for measures and more consolidation in the system so that we can have a very mega banks that will be able to do big tech, but it comes with a cost. All these things that we are saying, there is a need for robust regulation. There is a need for tough corporate governance, stricter supervision. So it's not just telling them to do it, but the external governance is missing. So they're going to have challenges because once you have capital, you need to do big tech business. And they take risk. In Nigeria, that's what they did. They started taking huge risks. And by the time they realized, they created an asset management company in 2011. So we should avoid that. Otherwise, I won't be surprised. Come 10 years, 5 years, we will see similar things as it happened in Nigeria.
I want to ask you about this. So Premium Bank, Heritage Bank, CBG is taking over that one. Quite a lot for CBG, is it?
Yes, for me, it's a lot. It's a lot. I would have possibly given it to maybe AGB and NIB to take over because CGB is even now, they have challenges. Look, I've been to one of their branches to tell you the truth. The integration hasn't worked efficiently. I mean, the MP for Boko Adongo said it. Whether the bailout has not been done, like the bond has not been demonetized to be given to them to run. Because when you go to some of the areas, you have challenges. You want to withdraw. Recently, my business went to take money at one of the banks, Unibank at Tanishi. There was no money, and the queue was too long. So that is why I'm worried that why do they want to add more to already not a very transparent and solid institution. So I'm worried, to be honest, by adding these two to the already consolidated, I'm worried. I'm worried.
All right, and from the customer perspective, the Bank of Ghana, worth reiterating, is saying that deposits are safe. There's nothing to worry about. That is an important assurance for depositors, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But you see, the reality is that when you go on the ground, it's not just when you're saying it. I sent one of my workers there to collect money on one Friday. A check of 1,000, they couldn't all night. And there were a lot of queues. So there's one thing giving the assurance. And one thing, the demonetizing the bond to make it as liquid so that it can be power liquid. So for me, its assurance is good and it has come at the right time, but they should do more.
Okay.
Right? They should do more.
And as we wrap up this one, I just want to know, going forward, what do you think are the sticking points for us, the issues that should be looked at?
Oh, thank you very much, Daryl. I have been a champion of this corporate governance. The problem we had was that corporate governance were not followed religiously. And also the regulatory infractions were too many. So now that we have consolidated, I believe that the corporate governance that was issued in Friday, 28th, Bank of Ghana should strictly stick to it. In addition, enforcement should be used, the best words, that everybody should be applied. Every rules must be applied religiously, rather than let them go back before we started talking about it. So my two take for them is that good corporate governance, effective and robust regulation. If we do these two things, I believe the sky will be limit for us in the next 2-3 years.
Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Darrell. Thank you, too.
Dr. Richmond Ituahene, he is a financial expert. He's been talking about a lot of things, Novan, and he pointed out that right now we don't know what the cost of this P&A agreement is going to be, and the Bank of Ghana has not disclosed it.
Yeah, it's quite interesting as to what really the situation should be for us. It's quite unfortunate that the Bank of Ghana has not been able to disclose this. We're hoping that maybe in subsequent or in the coming days, when they begin to speak on the matter, they would disclose these things to us.
And I also find it interesting when he says that he's worried about the fact that CBG is taking on more load, because already they're trying to figure out things following the collapse of five banks last year. From your perspective as well, you think it's a cause for worry?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I was with Kojo, I raised that same issue. I said, listen, why give it to CBG? I mean, why give them 7 banks? Why add extra 2 from the 5 that they already have? You could have looked for another bank to hand over that to them. If you thought that, okay, you're going to appoint an advisor for NIB, then and ADB was fine, you could have said, okay, we would want to ADB to take on these other 2 banks and then move on from there. That is if you want to give it to a state bank. You do not want to give it out to, a private owned bank. But maybe because these 2 banks themselves, as Dr. Ituahene did indicate, themselves are getting support from the amalgamated trust. So then, okay, if they are getting support themselves, why do we add more burden to it? Let's see how they will even manage the support that they have, and then allow CBG, which is already in the system, to see if they can take on these things.
And we're getting interesting comments from social media on all that is happening. My colleague Sandra Feno will be joining us briefly for more on what you are saying about this. But in circumstances like this, Norvan, there's always, or there used to be, should I say, fear amongst depositors about what was going to happen to their monies. Thankfully, as things have happened over the past year, the central bank has been quick to assure depositors that their funds are safe. So hopefully nobody will be running to the bank.
Sure.
On Monday is a holiday. Nobody will be running to their banks on Tuesday to find out if they can withdraw their cash.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, the timing of this press conference. What's the time? It's past 5.
Yeah.
All banks have closed. There's no bank working. And so good time to make sure that people do not rush. But don't forget those with ATMs well. I mean, they will get in there, and those who could do electronic transfers, they will want to see what they can do.
Yeah.
I mean, remember that prior to this press conference, in the last week or so, even before 31st, we've had a lot of calls at Joy Business. Which are the banks? What do you know about it? What is this? In fact, when this announcement was done and Paul's just finished, I had a call from someone from Central Region.
That.
Yeah, and the question was, okay, so now that GN Bank has been downgraded to savings and loans, is our money still safe? That was a simple question the person asked. You know, he said, I saw you on TV, you were discussing this issue, you said it become savings and loans, we've been going to the bank trying to get our money, and sometimes there are long queues and all that. We want to know, is our money still safe? And I had to go like, you know what, your money is safe. Because the central bank, just as you did indicate, over the years have said consistently, deposited funds are safe. So today, if you are for Premium Bank, Heritage Bank, you are now a member of the CBG Group, Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited. That's where you belong now, because your funds have been moved to that area. If you took a loan from either of these two, that is it. But you see, what is interesting about this Premium Bank, who are insolvent, their capital adequacy ratio is 125.26%. That is in the negative. This is what we are talking about. And that is a no as far as the central bank. And the governor himself, during the press conference, said we should have, revoked or closed down this bank in August. My question is, why didn't you do it? And he says, there were measure talks. And so we thought, this could be dealt with, and then we could move on from there. You gave them a special dispensation. Couldn't you have given that to other banks within there? What was so special about Premium Bank that you thought that you should give them that space? Today, you tell us in your own press statement that they are unable to meet customers' withdrawals. And it's also one of the reasons why you decided to take out. You recall that we did report on Joy Business that, Premium was in talks with GN and then Omni Bank. Right. You understand? Later, we had Omni Bank move away and decide to go into talks with Sahel. Sahel, they were rather with Sahel, you understand? So it was Premium, GN, and then Sahel. Then Sahel decided to pull out and go to Omni Bank. Then they went to Omni Bank. You get it? Then was left with just Premium and GN, and that also couldn't happen. So GN then applies to say, okay, we would like to become a savings and loans bank. That is what they did, and then today it's been announced that they're now a savings and loans bank. Premium Bank, I mean, if you read the details of the governor's statement, you'd be amazed. You think that this particular bank should have been far gone. They shouldn't have wasted time on it. They shouldn't have waited till this point where they cannot withdraw simple, withdrawals coming from customers.
All right, but that's the assurance. Do not rush to the bank on Tuesday.
Don't do it.
Because you are afraid that you're not going to get your money. But it puts a lot of strain on the banks, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Customers, rush to banks and try to get their money sort of. We've got to hand it to the Bank of Ghana. They've done a great job looking at all of this, have they?
Oh, well, I would say yes. And then we'll say no at some point because they have fueled a lot of the speculations. As of Monday, we were thinking, and then Tuesday thereabout, we're thinking that, okay, with government coming in with this amalgamated, Ghana really?
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one. Amalgamated trusts, I'm sure that at the end of 2019, I've given some soundbite. But on a more serious note, this Ghana amalgamated trust that has been put together. I mean, we thought that, okay, if you've done this, government has done this, then most of the banks were going to go for it. I mean, so you're looking at Heritage Bank probably. I don't know the reasons why Heritage Bank was not interested in this particular offer or bailout, and they decided that, okay, they probably would like to rather wind down, close, and then move on. Other banks as well who prefer, I'll rather prefer to do a measure or whatever it is. I think that it's been good over the years. This current crop of leadership at the central bank, I give them thumbs up. They've tried their best to ensure that the right things are done.
Adan, we're just going to take a short break. Just to remind you, the Bank of Ghana has held a press conference today in the wake of the deadline for recapitalization. You know that deadline passed on the 31st of December last year. Essentially, JN Bank has been downgraded to a savings and loans company. We've seen the licenses of Heritage Bank and Premium Bank revoked, and under a P&A agreement, a purchase and assumption agreement, and so that means that CBG takes over. We'll have more after this break. My colleague Philip Namfuri will be joining us for some more discussions. Just to recap, if you're just joining us, the Bank of Ghana about 30 minutes ago concluded a press conference following the deadline for the meeting of the minimum capital requirement of 400 million cedis. So here's the latest. GN Bank has been downgraded to a savings and loans company. Heritage Bank and Premium Bank have had their licenses revoked under a purchase and assumption agreement. That means CBG is taking over. We also understand that right now there are 23 universal banks. 16 banks met the minimum capital requirement. We've got 3 banks merging: First Atlantic and Energy Commercial Bank, Omni Sahel Sahara, First National Bank, and GHL Bank. You know, we reported earlier about some sort of financial arrangement for some local banks. So we are getting an idea which banks they are: ADB, NIB, Omni and Sahel Sahara, UMB, and Prudential. We also reported earlier that Bank of Baroda had voluntarily decided to leave the country, and so what it meant was that Stanbic Bank absorbed the customers and the loans of Bank of Baroda. We also are hearing that an advisor has been appointed for the NIB to advise management on the affairs of the bank. And so those are the latest we have from the press conference. A lot to discuss. I mean, what would be the impact on business, on the banking sector as well? But you also have been reacting to the news that we have been receiving this evening. My colleague Sandra Afeno is getting ready to bring us some of your messages, what you are saying on social media about this. But in all of this, the central bank has assured that your deposits are safe, so there's no reason to worry. So what are people saying? Sandra Afenu is by our touch screen tonight. She's got the details.
Yeah, so we've been asking what you make of the announcement by the Bank of Ghana. And we have Marcus Asari, who just said, Dr. Indum, you gave us the impression you were a very rich man. So 400 million cedis keke, you can't afford. You see how all you businessmen and links have collapsed under this government. Next time you think through and properly before joining the change agenda, bit political. Let's go to the next one. This is from Prinipa, and he said, so that thing I've been hearing, Indum is a rich man, Papa. He couldn't raise the money. And Ghana, dear, okay, I can't read that because the message is not okay. And somebody is asking, and the politics actually continues. We also have somebody who is Pierrot. He's saying that total humiliation to get him out of politics. Well, we don't know that for sure. And Mbola is also saying that Owusu Bempah would have been applauded if he was able to prophesize this simple situation, or it came late after he left the fifth plane, or he's not in the prophecy revealing terms with Papa Kwesi Indum. That's quite interesting. And somebody is also asking, Patrick Andor is asking, what about our money? So we know that the Bank of Ghana is assuring you that your money is safe, and so that's what we have been. So the breaking news again is GN Bank has been downgraded to a savings and loan company for failing to meet the 400 cedis minimum capital requirement. And so that's what has been happening on social media. Just add your comments to our various social media platforms and we'll get them to read. So over to you, Daryl, for the discussion.
Interesting comments there. Thanks very much indeed, Sandy. So that is what you're saying on social media. Dr. Richmond Etuahene calls this a messy situation. I don't know if you agree. Philip Namfuri joins me. Was it a mess? How's it looking?
No. I'm just glad that this whole deadline fuss is over. The governor has come out and he stated at the end of his submissions that this cleanup is done, and that for me was very, very striking because since 2017, when we started with the Youth Capital Bank, prior to that we had the asset quality review, and to break this down, it was essentially a stress test for the banks to see if something went wrong, can the banks have the capital to withstand the shocks. And it was found out that the banks didn't have this capital. So that's why this was one of the reasons that informed Bank of Ghana's minimum capital directive, which came out on Monday, 11 September 2017, when it says you have up to 31st December to meet this amount of money, from 120 million to 400 million Ghana cedis. Throughout the year 2018, we had several reforms in the banking sector. And just to mention a few of them, most of these were based on the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Act. There were clauses in there, or sections in there, that were operationalized by the Bank of Ghana. One notable one was the Banking Business Corporate Governance Directive, which has now been named and finalized as Corporate Governance Directive 2018. You know, corporate governance was one of the key issues that came up in the banking sector debacle earlier on in the year. And we've seen that the governor mentioned this again in his submission, that shareholders and boards have fiduciary responsibilities to you and I, Daryl, the depositors, and not themselves and their family and friends through the related and connected lending they do. Because essentially, it's the deposits of you and I that are funding these institutions. It's not their own money. Yes, they can contribute capital in forms of equity whatsoever, but ultimately the banks are run from our deposits. Our funds run these banks. So the governor reiterated this point, that going forward, the board should do what they must do to ensure that this is right. And this goes back to the Corporate Governance Directive that was finalized on December 27th, 2018, just last year, a few days ago.
I just need to point out that we will be bringing you back the press conference that was addressed by the governor of the central bank, Dr. Ernest Addison. Tough job for him, isn't it?
Indeed.
I mean, we've seen a lot happen within the space whilst he's been governor of the central bank. Right. So tell us, for the benefit of those who are wondering, how many universal banks do we have right now? We are told we have 23. Do we know them?
Yes, 23 banks. And I'm going to run through the list that the Bank of Ghana put out. 16 of them have met their minimum capital requirements. No merger whatsoever. Quickly, the list. Zenith Bank, Echo Bank, GCB Bank, Stanbic Bank, Standard Chartered Bank, Barclays Bank, Access Bank, Consolidated Bank, Republic Bank, Fidelity Bank, UBA, Societe Generale, GT Bank, FBN Bank, Cow Bank, and Bank of Africa. So that's 16 banks that have met this minimum capital requirement. Yes. Then we have banks that have merged. You went through them. First Atlantic Energy Bank, Omni Bank, Sahel Sahara Bank, and First National Bank, and GHL Bank. Then we have those that are seeking support from the government through the Ghana Amalgamated Trust. We have the ADB, we have NIB, Omni Bank, Universal Merchant Bank, and Prudential Bank. Then we have the Bank of Baroda exiting for strategic reasons, and this is its parent company, Bank of Baroda India, is winding down its operations in other parts of the world, and Ghana is unfortunately or fortunately part. So it's not because they couldn't meet this minimum capital requirement. If you check their financials and what the Bank of Ghana calls financial soundness indicators, Bank of Baroda had ticked all these boxes. It was just because of this strategic reason coming from the parent company. That's why they needed to exit the Ghanaian market. So you would see that a lot of banks have made 16 of them. And if these interventions weren't in place to assist, we would say that the number would have been a little lower than the 23 we have now. Obviously, once these other ones are wrapped up, we should see that fair number. But Daryl, once upon a time, we had 36 banks in the country. Prior to UT Capital Bank, when they went down, they became 34. When we had the 5 go down last year, it became 30, and now 23. The governor argues that this is significant consolidation. I don't know if you would agree with that or not.
Well, and it just reminds me of the conversation we had about the Nigerian situation, where they had about
89 banks.
89 banks, and it was reduced to 20.
Between 23 and 25. Let's just put
things came out better if you compare.
Yes. You see, the Nigerian reason is it's not very different from the Ghanaian one. They have a very large economy, no doubt, compared to Ghana, a very large population. But I remember speaking to the MD of the Seed Funds Savings and Loans Company in Ghana, and Mr. Albert Megwa. And
Yeah.
he's an experienced banker in Nigeria and Ghana, and he was explaining that, look, the banks were too small to be doing things in the economy, and they needed this consolidation that we so seek to finance what we call big ticket transactions. You know, prior to this, banks were arguing that, you know what, put us in a niche, let us do what we do best, and Bank of Ghana says no. Either you meet it, you downgrade, or you exit the market. And we've seen GN Bank come down to a savings and loans, and savings and loans are all part of the microfinance subsector. They're the tier one in the, together with finance houses and other ones. So even with GHL Bank's downgrade, it's not as simple as it looks.
Yeah.
It look like, yes, they have a lot of work to do, because we saw the panic
GN
withdrawals.
Bank, you mean?
Yes, GN Bank. And we saw the panic withdrawals in the course of last year. And moving from a banking operational model to a savings and loans operational model is a different ball game altogether. If you're even moving from a savings and loans, and there was one institution where a friend of mine worked, it was a savings and loans moving to a bank, and there was a lot of work, extra nights, you know, changing modules, and some transactions cannot be done in banking, cannot be done in savings and loans, but can be done in bank. For example, Forex or foreign exchange, and you heard the governor mention this. Also, with regards to this premium bank, Heritage Bank, again, the issue of debt comes up. 1.4 billion bond to take care of the gap between the assets and the liabilities. And some would argue that, you know what, the banking sector has significantly contributed to the high debt numbers in the country. If you read the 2019 budget, the Minister of Finance alluded to this fact that it significantly shot up our debt to GDP ratio to about 70% But fortunately or unfortunately, the GDP was rebased in September 2018, where we saw that that high debt to GDP ratio from 70 had come down to about the 56%. So what's this 1.4 billion going to do? Is it going to tweak it that much? And what's happening already with regards to bonds we're going to issue in the coming year and all that? Again, this financial sector cleanup debt does not come under the IMF's categorization of when they're looking at our numbers. It doesn't fall under, but it still stays on our debt. And even with this amalgamated trust, we're learning it's a private pension fund intervention and stuff like that. 2008 financial crisis, a lot of people lost their pensions. Why? The big pension funds, due to the fact that they can mobilize a lot of liabilities, and this is long term, because there are, when you put your money in a pension fund, you're not coming for it tomorrow morning. People lost their funds because they were used in structured financial products. I don't want to delve into it, and people lost their pension funds. So we need to be very, very careful and going forward. I'm sure they will take the right intervention to ensure that this is used appropriately.
So what essentially changes for GM Bank now, a savings and loans company? You talked about the fact that their modules would change. So how differently are they going to operate, essentially? So what's going to be the difference between them operating as a bank and now operating as a savings and loans company?
Okay, so as a bank, you possess a universal banking license. You can play in any space. You can undertake international transactions, and checks are cleared through your own system. Savings and loans, you clear your checks, etc., through a bigger institution. GM Bank has already made some strides coming from a savings and loans even into a bank. Now they're coming back downwards. You would see that, okay, you know what, with regards to deposit mobilization, let's assume that they already have the deposits because of the base they have. Your cost of funds might become more expensive because of the market, the niche market you are playing in. Savings and loans, based on theoretical underpinnings, are supposed to focus on a certain market. If you follow Bank of Ghana's argument, you realize that the microfinance subsector was created so that they will help those who don't have access to mainstream financial services. We've seen that GN Bank already has a customer base that is even in the top tier and low tier, if you can put it that way. Yeah. So going forward, they will have to come down to, in this current dispensation, after Bank of Ghana has released a number of directives to shape they'll have to come down and then reorganize themselves in how they operate. Because as a bank, you have some perks. As a savings and loans, you don't have those perks anymore.
Wow, that's interesting. A lot going to be happening in the coming days. But essentially, Philip, does that end the banking crisis?
Well, if you look at it critically, Governor says the cleanup is done. But you should factor in the cultural aspect of the Ghanaian people. How many reassurances did we get from the regulators? And how many times did people panic or not panic? So you realize that the psyche of the depositor has to be factored into this, because the cleanup might be finished in terms of making sure that the banks are on the strong strong capital.
All right, let me cut you a bit, because joining us on Skype is financial analyst Charles Mensah. Thanks for your time tonight. There we go again. We have to speak about another shake-up in the banking sector. Your thoughts, first of all, about all that has been taking place.
Good evening. This ought to have happened in December. And hopefully, it's better than now than later. The challenge is, first one I have is the bank. I mean, downgrading a universal bank to savings and loans in itself comes with a problem, because they cannot do foreign transaction. They cannot do letters of credit. So I don't know whether immediately customers of European Bank will do foreign transaction. Now, away from GN Bank, mainstream universal bank. Unless otherwise, there's a transitional risk where customers who will do foreign transactions, or GN Bank itself will sign some banks so that they can do this. That's the first point. The second to do with
all right, Mr. Mensah, we will come back to you. Just want to fix issues with our sound to you, and then we'll come back and have that discussion. But in the meantime, we can't play for you the Bank of Ghana's address to the press a while ago. Listen to bits of that press conference.
With the objective of cleaning up the sector, strengthening the regulatory and supervisory framework, with a view to creating a more resilient banking sector. As you all know, as part of this reform exercise, the licenses of 7 banks were revoked over the last 16 months. And we took steps to ensure that they exited the market in an orderly manner. Furthermore, the bank on 11 September 2017 issued the Minimum Capital Directive, by which all banks were required to increase their minimum paid-up capital to 400 million by 31st December 2018. Banks were required to comply with the new minimum paid-up capital through fresh capital injection, capitalization of income surplus, or a combination of the two. The Minimum Capital Directive was part of regulatory measures that were aimed at strengthening the banking sector to make it more resilient to shocks, as well as to help position the banks to better support the growing needs of the Ghanaian economy. It was also the expectation of the Bank of Ghana that the recapitalization exercise would help promote consolidation in the banking industry through sustainable mergers and acquisitions, along with stronger corporate governance structures and risk management systems and practices. Following the recapitalization exercise that has just ended at the end of December 2018, we now have 23 universal banks operating in Ghana. These banks have all met the new minimum paid-up capital of 400 million Ghana cedis. In particular, 16 banks have met the new minimum paid-up capital requirement of 400 million through the capitalization of income surplus and fresh capital injection. The Bank of Ghana has approved 3 applications for mergers. Consequently, the First Atlantic Merchant Bank Limited, an energy commercial bank, have merged. Omni Bank and Bank Sahel Sahara have merged. And First National Bank and GHL Bank have merged. The three resulting banks out of these mergers have all met the new minimum capital requirement. Some private pension funds in Ghana have injected fresh equity capital in 5 indigenous banks through a special purpose holding company named Ghana Amalgamated Trust Limited. In addition to the state-owned banks, that is ADB, NIB, benefiting from the GATT scheme, the other beneficiary banks, the merged OMI and Sahel Sahara, Universal Merchant Bank, and Prudential Bank, were selected by GATT on the basis of their solvency and good corporate governance. You can get more details of the GATT scheme from the GATT itself and the Ministry of Finance. To ensure that the capital provided by banks indeed represents quality capital in the amounts required to meet the minimum capital directive, the Bank of Ghana adopted and implemented a rigorous capital verification process. In the process, the Bank of Ghana has undertaken comprehensive due diligence on new investors in banks and has verified the sources of funds for the recapitalization. Some of this verification process is still ongoing and will be validated by the external auditors of banks as part of the 2018.
All right, that was the central bank governor. Let's reconnect with Charles Mensah, a financial analyst. Hopefully we have a good audio connection. So you're talking about the transition that GN has to make from being a bank to a savings and loans company, and effectively what the transition process is going to be like and the impact on the business as well. Tell us more about that.
I think basically when you switch from universal bank to savings and loans bank, you are just a local deposit and then loans company. You cannot do letters of credit. You cannot transfer monies abroad. So you have to work with or work through one of the banks who have a corresponding bank to do that. So it means that customers who hitherto were doing that with GN will now have to look for a new bank to do their foreign transactions, which means that GM may end up losing all his customers who are doing foreign transactions. So as we speak, either there will be a transitional arrangement where GN Bank itself will go into some arrangement with one of the universal banks to do their foreign transactions for and on their behalf for their customers.
And I don't know if we've seen anything quite like this in the history of the banking sector here in Ghana, but it's also quite a tough task for banks that are merging right now, getting their business modules to sink in. They're going to have some challenges, aren't they?
They may, because in the end, the systems have to look right. The culture of the two banks have to be merged. The customers, the synchronization of the IT system have to work. The board structure have to work. So plus or minus maybe 3 to 4 months, then they will have a smooth running. Because definitely once you merge, they will have one finance director, they will have one managing director, and the corporate account director as well. So things will change within the merged bank. So if they have a smooth level, it will be between 8 and 12 weeks.
And in the midst of all this, we are also concerned about job losses. What are going to happen to personnel of some of the banks that are affected by this shake-up from the central bank? It's a big issue.
It's possible that if you take GN Bank, the people who are recruited to do the trade department, i.e., those who are doing health,
from tomorrow they don't have a job. Unless you are going to assign them to do different thing altogether, they don't have a job. That's the reality. Now, with the merged banks, it depends on the strategy of the merged company. If the merged is to expand businesses, then they will not lose any staff. But I'm worried about the corporate culture practices from different banks. It's not going to be, because the way First Atlantic Merchant Bank does it will definitely differ from energy. By and large, some of their shareholders are the same, because FMG, some of the shareholders are from Nigeria, Technic Bank, some of the shareholders are from Nigeria. Maybe they will not have too much parties. And I think that same would happen FNL and then GHF, because they both have South Africa. But the Ghanaian version of it is how you bring them together. I'm worried a bit about the Omni Bank and Sahel Bank. Because Sahel Bank is a big company. I don't know why the shareholders of Sahel Bank, who are foreign, couldn't inject so much money into the merged thing that to rely on the amalgamated to pump money into it. Unless otherwise the strategy is to have
Unfortunately, we lost that connection to Charles Mensah, but my colleague Sandy is standing by with more of what you're saying. In subsequent days, you're going to delve into the matters, important points that he has been raising there. Sandy, what are people saying?
Yeah, so a lot to say on social media, actually. Let's take the first one from Yaedua Samoa. He said, the institutions are working as expected. Bank of Ghana has done well by cleaning the banking system. Good job. That is from Yao Edu. And then we have also from Tewia Odonko. He said, so in a nutshell, how will depositors get their money? What then happens to those who invested with Gold Coast Fund? That's a question he's been asking. And then also to Victor Paul, and he said, so sad. Hopefully they regroup and bounce back. And somebody is doing some adverts right there, but moving on. Somebody says, shame on Indum. Well, I don't know what I mean then. Somebody also, Baku Rashid said, and then Adam Ali is also saying that, Papa Kwesi Indum, you go talk true. You disguided party for you. When we talk, say this NPP, well, it's in pidgin, so we can't really get what he's trying to say. But this is from Nane Ifya. Say, yeah, so what about our money? We've been assured by the governor of the Bank of Ghana that our money is safe, so no need to worry about that. Another person is asking the same question, what about our money? And then we write Rafik, what does this move mean to people who hold salary accounts with GN Bank? I think it's something. Philip, what should they do? It's a question maybe we should.
All right. Thanks very much, Sandy. We have to wrap up under, 20 seconds. Good job by the central bank.
Yes, Daro, if you look at it from their perspective, yes, over the course of the year, they've been timely with their communication. Even if you engage bankers, they will allude to this fact that they've done well with coming forward with information, telling us. Some will argue that, yes, they delayed a bit in some places, because we heard about some of these issues even before today.
Yeah.
But all in all, Bank of Ghana is taking the right steps to ensure that the sector is on a strong footing. All
right, we have more on this developing story on JoyNews Prime. You want to make a date? That'll be it for our special coverage on the breaking news from the banking sector. My name is Daryl. Thanks for watching. I've been doing this with Sandra Fenn.